What's up, friends? Today we're here to talk about the Exway Flex Paragon. This board is an interesting iteration on the Flex series of boards, of which I've reviewed all of them, starting with the Flex ER, the Flex Pro, and then finally the Flex 2 Pro. I guess I didn't review the original Flex, but that one was a little bit of a flop in comparison to the rest. So what does this modern board have to offer, and is it worth the $500 premium over the Flex 2 Pro? I'm not so sure. Let's get into it. First off, let's talk about some reasons to buy this board. I want to keep this review kind of short because there are a lot of similarities between this and the Flex 2 Pro. So why should you buy this one over the Flex 2 Pro? Well, for starters, and I think the main selling point, you have a removable battery. This battery at the front of the board can be easily removed within a couple of seconds, and the reality is that is the only way you're going to be able to fly with an Exway board like this one. You can potentially fly with the Ripple in the flight configuration, but for this you would have to ship the battery ahead to your destination and then ship or take the board with you on the plane. But regardless, this is the only Exway board that has a removable battery, besides the Atlas Pro with the aux pack, I guess you could sort of say. So that's the number one selling feature of this. And honestly, you can just stop watching the review right here if you want and just buy the Flex 2 Pro instead, if that's not something that you want. And that is the reality of the Flex Paragon. Obviously, Exway would like me to say that it's a lot more powerful and that it has a lot more range. And it does have a little bit more of each of those. But for me, the main selling feature that should point you towards the Paragon versus the Flex 2 Pro is purely that swappable battery. So in terms of that little bit of extra performance, you'll see the numbers when we go into the PSPEC, but it does have a little bit more range, and it does have a little bit more quickness, and a little bit more braking, but all these things are not things that you're really going to notice on a day-to-day basis. Point being, the Flex 2 Pro was already really good, and I gave that a pretty great rating in the video that I did on that before, and this one got a very similar rating. I don't know that that cost difference of $500 justifies that little bit of performance. Moving on to the reason why you shouldn't buy this, of course, the cost difference is number one. It's $500 more, at least according to the prices today. I'll put them on screen or at some point in the video, but the price difference is the main reason for me. And another one, which is kind of weird for Exway at least, is that the build quality of this doesn't feel quite as premium as the Flex 2 Pro. And honestly, a lot of that does go towards this removable battery. I don't know what happened when they were designing this, but it clanks a little bit more, it vibrates a little bit more. The cable design is poor. The bend radius on this is absolutely violated, and I mean the rubber bits don't stand quite properly. It doesn't have the same fit and finish that I want an Exway board to have. And while it does look stunning, the Flex 2 Pro is great too. So I don't know, I think they missed a little bit there. But that being said, it is still a really good board, and I'm more than happy to ride this every day over the Flex 2 Pro if it means that I get a little bit more range and a little bit more performance with cost out of the question. But overall, I think it's still a buy if you have the money. If you don't have the money, you have two options. You can either do the Flex 2 Pro for $1,000, or you can get an absolute steal of a deal at $899 for the regular Flex Pro, which I reviewed a couple years ago. And that has almost all the same performance too. It just doesn't quite have the range that you would be looking for on this board. So that all being said, let's just jump straight into the PSPEC, because I think that's what you guys are really going to be interested in. So where exactly does this rank on the PSPEC chart, and what are all of its numbers? Well, I'll just rip the band-aid off and tell you that this scored only 3 points higher than the Flex 2 Pro, and ironically only about 5.5 points higher than the original Flex Pro. Now, based on my scores here and looking at the numbers, you'll quickly understand why. So let's go through each of the categories of the PSPEC, starting with acceleration. The Flex Paragon came in at a best time of 3.13 seconds for the acceleration. And if you look at the other two competitors right next to it, the Flex 2 Pro and the Flex Pro, you'll see that we're honestly within what almost feels like margin of error. But since I'm using a draggy, these numbers are pretty dang accurate. So I don't think it's a margin of error thing here. I think that is the actual numbers, and it is just a tiny bit quicker in the 0 to 20 time than the Flex Pro and the Flex 2 Pro. Being compared to other boards in the acceleration range, we're looking at the Atlas Pro and the Defiant 1, and then a couple DIY boards, and then the Nomad N3 and N1 are pretty far away. But overall, it's really respectable. They're quite quick boards, especially for being a urethane board that's flexible and belts. Moving on to the 100-meter sprint, it tells a similar story to the 0 to 20 time, with the Paragon coming in at 9.57 for the 100-meter sprint, and the Flex Pro and Flex 2 Pro coming in right behind it. Weirdly enough, in my testing, the Flex 2 Pro was like 0.3 seconds slower than the Flex Pro. I don't really know what happened there. But the Paragon did come out on top at 9.57. Nearby, we have the Atlas Pro, the Defiant 1, and then on the other side, we have the Aries X1 from ASTEC. Now, not bad 0 to 30 time, or sorry, 100-meter sprint time, which ironically is 0 to 30, because moving on to the top speed, which I'm doing this a little out of order, but it makes sense here. The top speed of the Flex 2 Pro and the Flex Paragon are what I really wanted to see do better, especially because of the 14S on the Flex Paragon. But unfortunately, we topped out at the same top speed as the Flex 2 Pro at 31, which I think is a real shame. Well, rounding up it's 31, but what I actually measured was 30.6. And the Flex 2 Pro hit 31. So I don't really know why we can't get a bunch of extra speed with 14S. That was the one thing I was really hoping for performance-wise, is that we'd get at least up to 35, but we just didn't. So it is what it is. That's your top speed. And nearby you have the Atlas Pro, the Aries X1, and the Meepo Envy. The Meepo Envy is a cheaper board, and it can still go faster with a respectable performance in the 0 to 20 and the 100-meter sprint area. To again see a similar story, which shouldn't be surprising at this point, with the Paragon coming out to 23.23 Newton meters. The Flex 2 Pro was 22.33, and the Flex Pro original was 21.4. It's kind of interesting how close all these boards are, with no other boards from other companies getting in here at all. Nearby, we have the Aries X1 again, the Meepo Envy, and the Defiant 1, as well as my old own board DIY, which was a 10S board, mind you. Finally, we have braking, which arguably is a very important thing to be testing. For this, we do see again a similar story with the Flex Paragon coming out nearby, but this is one thing that it did a little bit better at, interestingly enough. The Paragon came out at 18.63 as its best stopping time, whereas the Flex 2 Pro was at around 21 feet and the Flex Pro was around 23. So this could be due to a little bit of ESC tuning changes between the old remote and the Rexus, or it could just be some updates to the Hobbywing ESCs that they got in there. But regardless, it did pretty well in braking, and I'll show a couple clips of that on the screen, as I usually do with these parts of the video. So the final thing is range, and range is another thing that I was really hoping we'd get a better look at on the Paragon versus the Flex 2 Pro. The Flex 2 Pro being a 12S 2P of Samsung 50S cells and the Paragon being a 14S 2P. So what I expected was to get maybe a little bit more, maybe like 2 miles more, when in reality what we actually got was 18.11 miles, which is only about 0.61 miles more than the Flex 2 Pro. So you're paying $500 more for a little bit of performance and a tiny bit of range increase. Is it worth it? I don't know. Performance spec speaks for itself. Coming in at 48.3 total for the Flex Paragon, 45.3 for the Flex 2 Pro, and 42.7 for the Flex Pro. Again, nearby Meepo Envy. I'll put it on screen. Meepo Envy at 38.5 and just above the Aries X1 at 50.7. So there's your PSPEC. I think this is very interesting information. The first thing that I thought of when I got this was, is the 14S going to make a difference? Am I going to actually feel anything? And the first time I wrote it, I was shocked and realized that it felt exactly the same as the Flex 2 Pro. Now, maybe it's different for other people, but these are my testing results. Quick fun bonus clip here. Taking off the removable battery is pretty easy and quick. Simply pull out your metal tabs here, press in on the sides of the connector, pull up, and then you just pop it out backwards. Super quick, super simple, and it seems like the waterproofing on the battery itself is pretty good. All the screw holes are sealed, and yeah, pretty simple. To put it back on, stick it in between the slots, pop it forwards, plug in your connector, and you close your 2 tabs and you're done. Pretty easy. All right, so the RBEM score, as you guys probably know by this point, is my subjective rating of boards. And I'd like to focus on the differences here between the Flex 2 Pro and the Flex Paragon. We're going to go through each of them one at a time, but still, these will be pretty quick. So first off, build quality. This is the one thing that I did have to knock down a little bit because I just don't feel like this is built quite as well as the Flex 2 Pro. It just doesn't feel quite as premium with the rattling and just how they designed some of the mechanisms on here. The fit and finish is just not quite as good as the Flex 2 Pro, which, to be fair, the Flex 2 Pro was quite good. So we ended up with a 7.8 out of 10 for the build quality on this Flex Paragon. Now, the deck is identical as far as I can tell, 8.5 out of 10 for both of them. The remote is identical, both the Rexus, which I will say I do like the Rexus remote a lot, but I'm going to put the complaint out there. The battery life is just not good enough. It dies very, very quickly when it's sitting, not being used. So I found if you're riding with it, it's really not too bad, but sitting on your shelf, more often than not, I come to a dead remote when I want to go ride. So I have to remember ahead of time before I ride to charge my remote. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to ride. So keep that in mind. Rexus remote is great. Screen is great. Thumb wheel is great. I think it's very comfortable to use. Has great features. Controlling the lights, the turn signals, which questionable usefulness, but cool to have. It has a parking mode where if you let it time out for 20 seconds, you can have it lock the remote automatically. Tap the dead man switch to unlock it. I use that all the time. Just a really great set of features that also connect with the app. So I like the remote and ESC combo. They work well together. In any case, 9.5 out of 10 for the remote. Still one of my favorite remotes that I've ever used. ESC, I'm giving it a tiny bit more score than the Flex 2 Pro because it is a little bit more performant. So 8.6 out of 10 versus 8.5 out of 10 on the Flex 2 Pro. Trucks and bushings, identical, 8.5 out of 10. Still one of the best RKB trucks that I've ridden. Love them out of the box. They work great. Wheel options, same as the other board, 4 out of 5. Water resistance, 4.4 out of 5. The reason I downgraded a little bit is because there is a connector on here. And while it is a ruggedized connector, there's still an opportunity for those pins to get wet if you're unplugging and replugging it constantly. And the O-rings can wear out and stuff like that. So I knocked it down just a tiny bit, but still pretty decent. Customer service, 4 out of 5 for Exway. I still think that there's room to improve on a lot of these companies, especially with response time and the way they handle solving issues. And finally, price and value. This is where the Flex Paragon took the biggest hit. So our Flex 2 Pro, I gave it 4.2 out of 5. I really like the Flex 2 Pro. It's a great board, has great performance, cool features like the lighting and stuff. The Flex Paragon is just not going to be there. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I think it is still a good board, and I think it offers good performance for the money, but it's hard to compare when you have the Flex 2 Pro that's a lot cheaper for 95% of the performance. So those are my thoughts. The total RBEM score comes out to 58.3, which puts it in 3rd place behind the Flex 2 Pro, which is in 1st, and the Nomad N3 in 2nd. I do have reviews coming out soon for other boards that will top this chart, so make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for that. And like if you're enjoying this technical content. The weight comes out at 24.8 pounds for the Flex Paragon versus the Flex 2 Pro, which was 22.26, so a little bit heavier. And for me, I was comfortable cruising at about the same speed on both of these boards. So I'll give you my final thoughts and then we'll head on out. So here's a summary. Who should buy this board? Well, the same people that should buy this board are the ones that would have bought the Flex 2 Pro, but maybe had a little bit more money and value the idea of carrying an extra battery in their backpack, which costs this much. I believe it's around $500, something like that. But you can do it. You could extend your range from 18 miles to 36 miles by just carrying another battery in your backpack, which is pretty cool. However, the value proposition for me is not there. I think that most people will be better served buying the Flex 2 Pro, and you're really not missing out on a whole lot. You got great performance, great lighting, and you may be missing out on a little bit of the great looks here if that's your thing, but for me, I think you're better off with the Flex 2 Pro. Either way, the Flex Paragon is very cool. I think it's a cool concept. I like that it has a USB port on it that you can charge your phone or your remote with, which ironically you might need to charge your remote with. But it's not selling for me. I don't want to make this too negative because it really is a great board and it is close to the top of my chart, but I'm just trying to share the facts with you, and that's what I think. So if you enjoyed, make sure to hit like and get subscribed for my Rev board review and my MLR review. Those are coming out soon. So thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out.